honestly do.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, guys. Welcome back. We are back again. I hope everyone is having a good day. So today we're going to discuss the Russian-Ukraine war up to now. You know what's going on now, and probably what might happen in the future. So today we have a guest. His name is Oscar, and I do want for him to introduce himself. You know, he's a guy who, you know, he's knowledgeable also in the political arena. He has ideas, and I wanted him to engage with him, and, you know, we share ideas and brainstorm on the things that are happening on the ground. Hey, what's up, Oscar? Sema, what's up?
Yes, mostly Oscar, Pendayar sana, you know, the politics is.
I think you should keep it in English.
So I love politics. Politics is quite interesting. International relations as a field of study is quite ripe. It's ever changing, always evolving, and it's always it provides a good opportunity for us to do some research and and learn more about ourselves, because I mean it is a highly human kind of related field. So so thanks for having me, Josh. So let's do this one.
I wanted to ask you just straight to the, you know, to the topic of the day. What is your view on the war currently, and how are you seeing things happening in the political arena in terms of Russia and Ukraine? How has it affected the global order from your view?
Russia-Ukraine war, it's quite interesting one, because how it started, it was I think everybody, including the Russians, thought that by invading Ukraine immediately, they could probably have turned over the country and taken over the country within a couple of days.
Yes.
But over time, Ukraine, with the support of the Western world, has been able to put up some strength, and also it has changed the balance of power, because now for the first time since the Second World War, we have seen the rearmament of Germany. Because I mean, Germany has started now getting back that military aspect to it. At the same time, we have seen
a few people are shocked though.
Yeah,
people.
Yeah, because Olaf Scholz is is trying one, because I think what people thought. I think the first idea was that NATO could have invaded and helped Ukraine, but NATO be standing by and being able to send money and a couple of weapons also created an avenue, because now the countries that surround Ukraine, Germany, Russia, France, the UK, they've started realizing that the threat that Putin is like the threat Putin has towards the Western world, and that has brought about the rearmament of Germany. And at the same time, we also need to like take into consideration how Ukraine has been able to like fight off Russia for a long time. It's like the 10th month and they're still at it. And if you really look at it, at first Ukraine didn't have that much in terms of military power. Now they've been able to, for example, one of the Russian Su-35 jets, one of the best interceptors in the world and the best fighters in the world, actually the state of the art, better than the American jets, was shot down by a Ukrainian faction who, and the mother box, the holy grail technology, the whole technology bit of it was taken in, it was intact and given to the American people to actually like reverse engineer it and understand the Russian frequencies and how they operate their jets and everything. So, and in addition to that, Ukraine has been able to put off a really good standoff, because they're using the smallest of gadgets, mediocre tablets to weaponize drones and to be able to like take down Russian troops and all that. But if you really look at it, both sides are winning, because Russia is putting its foot down and saying that there has to be an end in the Western kind of power. But at the same time, Ukraine has put down its foot, trying to show that Western Europe, in regards to the NATO countries that surround Ukraine, Ukraine will actually win NATO in the end, because they've been able to put up a force that Russia hasn't seen in a long time. Because Russia has been to Iraq, it's been to Afghanistan, it's been to Syria, but now
but you know, also I don't know if there's any prospect of Ukraine joining NATO, because you know, Russia will probably cover half of the country and take it on its own, and, you know, and the prospect of the other part of Ukraine probably trying to join NATO will resort to another invasion. So I think the issue, for me, I think the issue of Ukraine joining NATO is off the table. I don't think Ukraine will ever join NATO. I feel the only thing that it might be close to joining is the European Union. The European Union dream is a bit more feasible and more, you know, open, even though it's not now, you know, because remember President Macron said that Ukraine joining NATO will take decades because, you know, there are certain criteria it needs to qualify. And but for me, NATO, I'd put it off the table because that will now promote Russia to a full-scale invasion in which I don't think any parties want that. And you know, it's very interesting that also for me that Ukraine has been able like to resist and you know, you know, like keep the fight going. Although it hasn't been doing good, you know, because you can't compare the military strength of Russia and Ukraine, but the resistance has been heavy. But you know, people shouldn't forget that NATO was training Ukrainian military since 2014. When Russia took over Crimea. So American intelligence has been helping, American and NATO intelligence has been helping the Ukrainian to know where the Russians are, where the army battalions are moving and going. And right now, I feel like Ukraine is more, you know, Ukraine just had its Independence Day last week, you know, independence as a nation. And when you look at the history of Ukraine, for the past, you know, decades, it hasn't really had a good, Ukraine was never really independent, you know. Ukraine was always a country that was always fought for, you know, especially, you know, when you look through history, when, you know, guys like Napoleon and this king, when they were trying to invade Russia, Ukraine was always the battleground. Ukraine is just next to Russia. So it's very hard for you when you're invading Russia not to go through Ukraine. So it's very interesting to see that Ukraine has never had its sovereignty as a country. You know, it has never enjoyed pure, you know, what will I call legitimate, you know, ruling on its own. And it finds itself again in a situation where, you know, there's a war happening in the country. It's losing almost half of its territories. It has lost its coastline because now Russia controls the whole port, you know. So I think Ukraine for me was more of a proxy country in the global competition, power competition between United States, Russia and China in terms of, you know, Ukraine is, you know, in Kiswahili you have this say that says fahali wawili wakipigana nyasi umia, meaning that when two bulls fight, it's only the grass that gets hurt, you know, because you find that, you know, the American, you know, led Washington mindset was pushing for, you know, for the expansion of NATO. We must not forget that even after the fall of the Soviet Union, the American establishment always views Russia as a threat. They've always viewed Russia. The fact that now the Soviet Union failed, Russia is a good country, has never faded away. They still have that nostalgia. So their aim was to move NATO to Ukraine. And for the Russian, you know, Ukraine is a red line. Ukraine is a very sacred country to the Russians, you know. Ukraine was the heartland of Russia in farming. You know, most political leaders of the, you know, of the Politburo, the council, the Communist Council, most of them came from Ukraine. You know, Ukraine was the industrial hub for Russia. So Ukraine has always been, you know, very dear to Russia, and Ukraine was always the red line if they try to, you know, to come into and take Ukraine, because now to the Russians this was now, you know, they consider Ukraine as part of their own. But then again, you know, this war in Ukraine has also brought a big solidarity, you know, amongst European countries, because we remember before the war, you know, Germany was following its own vision, France was following its own vision, Britain was following its own vision. All these European countries didn't seem to be, you know, united, even though they were in the European Union. That's why you saw even Britain came out of the European Union. But now you can see that there's a common, you know, there's a common language from the European Union. And I don't know about Germany rearming, but I was reading an article that was saying that Germany was waiting for an excuse like this to start rearming. Germans are good in manufacturing and especially industrial manufacturing, and the military industrial complex. So it's a good business, and they've always wanted to enter into this business. So this to them was like an excuse now to start also their own military industrial complex, because they're saying since Germany has set money aside for its military to start rearm, Germany will be now the third largest funder of funding its own military. It will be bearing it will funding the most money after America, China, and the third country will be Germany. So Germany will be the third highest country in terms of military funding. So if you look at how things are going, I don't know. It's like when back into before World War II started. Where countries are starting to rearm. You can see also Japan is also trying to see if it can do away with its its long-standing policy of not rearming, not its military. The Japanese military was only meant for defense purposes, but now they're trying to push it to an offensive kind of military. But all in all, I feel the Europeans are very united, and I think they've decided that this time around they will make things clear with Russia. They won't pretend they are friends anymore. I do. For me, I see going forward that Russia and
for example, by Ukraine joining NATO, I don't really mean that they will join NATO immediately. I mean, them joining NATO in the past was more of the European countries taking pity on Ukraine, said that you don't have an army, so come and join NATO. Then but now the fact that they've been able to put up such a good fight, and they've been able to withstand commands of Russian assaults. For instance, they've been able to push back the Russian forces in the south part of Ukraine. So they're fighting back. So this is going to make Ukraine actually earn its place in NATO. So they won't have to be going to be invited to join NATO. So now this will change the whole ballgame in regards to how Russia works. At the second time, since the war in Ukraine started, Russia has been using oil as a weapon, trying to cut off the gas line into Europe. But now there's a huge, at first people thought that European countries will fold and they will buy the Russian oil. Yes, for a minute they actually did that. But now this has now brought about the emergence of the need for clean energy. For instance, Biden passed the climate change act bill in the US. So that also most of the European countries are following what Obama used to tell them, that they need to embrace cleaner energy, more efficient energy. And if you actually look at the Western European countries, they've been able to make some quite advancements in this particular area of energy. If you look at the Scandinavian countries that are closer to Russia, most of them are green states. So the whole idea that Russia could have used oil as a way to leverage countries to buy its oil, again, it's more of a blowback, because countries are going now into the greener energy. For example, just to put it into perspective, the famous Bugatti, they have made their last car that will use oil fuel, and they've closed the fuel line in terms of manufacturing cars, so they're not going green. So from 2023, we'll never see a Bugatti that has an oil-based engine. They'll be using green energy. When you look at these new cars being bought into Europe, the most HEVs are cars that use electricity. Again, the US has now also tried to put up its foot down again, because the US has never been wrong. Because if you look at what's happening after the rise of Russia and the invasion of Ukraine, we have seen the growth of fascism across the world, even in the US itself. The MAGA Republicans. When you go to Asia, the Communist Party in China has started showing its fascism aspects, not the democratic aspect that it used to have back in the day. When you go to countries like the Philippines, when you go to countries that Venezuela, South America, fascism is on the rise. But the good thing is that most countries again are trying to fight back and bring back that idea that democracy, as much as it's a failed experiment, it's really important for the political process. Holding government institutions accountable. If you're a leader, like for example, what's happening in the US, at least for the first time, we are seeing that institutions are actually working, being able to hold a person like Trump, the rhetoric on how to treat people and everything. So this has made America sign and bring into perspective its Asia-Pacific alliance. Biden had done a tour in Asia. Same with Pelosi, same with a few other senators from the US. They had a small tour in Asia-Pacific. Look at countries like Thailand, countries like Singapore, and all these countries in the Southeast Asia regions. Most of them are building up and siding with the US. They're having military drills with the US. When you go to Japan, as much as it was an enemy of the US, it's seen the Chinese aggression towards Japan, the launching of missiles towards the Japanese coast and all that. So Korea, again, once Putin, Kim Jong-un offered over 100,000 troops to go help the Russians fight Ukraine. That again put South Korea on alert. So as much as we are seeing these countries that are coming up to support Russia, again, we are seeing another a really good counter from these Western countries, because I feel like at the end of the day, I am for the idea that the world has to be multipolar. We don't need to have one superpower. And I think the fact that this is happening, most countries are now becoming powerful enough again. Like Germany, France, the UK is building up its arms again. Something interesting, the US and the UK and Australia signed a nuclear pact, making Australia a nuclear power. So that again has brought up Australia as a force to be reckoned with within the Pacific region, in aspects of war. Again, when you look at the rise of other institutions, for instance, now we are seeing the rise of BRICS. BRICS has been mentioned more in the past 6 months than it was ever mentioned in the past. Now, this also in a way has signaled the entrance of Africa countries, India, into the global arena in such a way that now for South Africa to have a stand on how they approach Russia and how they approach the US, that indicates the growth of how the growth of states, especially within the third world countries. Also, it's interesting that Russia wanted to change the polarity of the world by giving itself a higher footing, but instead it's opened up Pandora boxes all over the world. Countries are joining, and new alliances are being formed. For instance, nobody thought that China will have had a collapse, because as of last year, Xi Jinping had projected the Chinese growth of the economy to around 5.something% growth, but now it's been lowered close to 4.2% because of the issues happening in China, the zero COVID policy, which has seen most tech companies move away from China, going into Singapore, going into Malaysia, going into Thailand, and most again the fact that the Chinese brought in a law that in every big company that is based in China, there has to be a Communist Party official as part of the board members. So that again has shifted a lot of innovative companies from China all the way to the Southeast Asia Pacific countries. And again, most Southeast Asia Pacific countries happen to be, they're not really as democratic as the American states, but they have that aspect of self-governance where we choose our own leaders regardless of, some of them are kingdoms. So again, you see that China is losing its footing also in Asia. As much as it's making a lot of headway in terms of the military, the economy, other countries within Asia are growing faster. Countries like Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, they are actually creating really nice progress in terms of balancing the power of China in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Japan has always been silent, but we've seen Japan is waking up. So the world is now multipolar, not the way Russia really wanted it to be multipolar, but it's now multipolar in a way that every single country wants a stake or wants a piece of the table, not just to be behind a seat. Or no, every country now wants a piece of the table. African countries are becoming much more vocal on who they're going to partner with. That's why the US has been trying so hard to get into Africa, because it's now or never. Because if they lose this market, then this market will obviously go to the Asian countries and Russia, because Russia has a really nice relationship with African states. Because I mean, from South Africa, how they were able to help fight apartheid, and even Kenya, as much as we are not, we are non-aligned. That also is a threat to most of these European countries, because Kenya doesn't take a stand at all. Kenya is non-aligned. So as long as you bring something
Kenya
good to
non-aligned,
us,
really? See,
yeah, Kenya's yeah. If you
probably the Ministry of Foreign Affairs official might be Kenya is not non-aligned, but you all know Kenya has chosen sides. You know, even in the Cold War, during the Cold War, the first president and the second president tried to say that Kenya is non-aligned, but all their business transactions were Western. So probably the official statement of the government is Kenya is not non-aligned.
Not really, no.
But Kenya is very aligned. It's like they tell you don't judge a person by their appearance, judge them from what they do. So if we look at the actions of Kenya as a country, it has already taken sides.
Look at it this way. Kenya does business with China. Kenya does business with the US. Kenya has business with Europe as well. Non-alignment per se is the fact that Kenya was able to make a speech and say that they are for democracy. Most African states understand the notion of being invaded. For instance, China has always said it's a third world country because it was once colonized. You see? So African countries don't come from a perspective of democracy or anything. Then they're coming from a perspective of you were once colonized. We understand when a country comes and invades your way of life, invades what you guys have planned for yourself, your sovereignty goes just because another country wants a piece of what is that lies in your country. So Kenya has never been aligned to any state. Kenya is only aligned to the principles that it was founded on. The principles its foreign policy is founded on. So you can't say that Kenya is aligned. Kenya has never been aligned. Kenya has always been open for business with any particular country. We even do business with Israel and other states. But we've always made it clear that we are founded on the principles of our foreign policy, man. Because there are so many beneficial aspects we've gotten from China, we've gotten from the US, we've gotten from Europe, we've gotten from South America, and all that has found its way into the Kenyan system, where most of the Kenyan people have actually been benefited. So African states are never really aligned to the US or the Western countries because of democracy or anything. No, African countries come from an idea that we were once colonized. We understand when a country comes and puts its foot on your own way of life. So you never hear any African country saying, even like for instance, one could say South Africa is aligned to Russia, but they're not aligned to Russia. They've always had that heart of saying thanks to what they did to them during apartheid, where no other country wanted to help South Africa apart from Russia. So and also the fact that they are part of BRICS. Now, if you look at what BRICS has done, it's been able to in a way to echo what African countries really want in development. We don't want to be aligned with anybody. That's why when you go to Nigeria, you find nearly all countries investing in Nigeria, investing in Kenya, investing in South Africa, investing in Ethiopia. There are so many reasons as to why Africa is opening up, and most African states, as much as you might think they're aligned, most of them are never aligned. Even at a point where whoever has something that you can benefit, you bring it, we'll sum them all up, then grow our economy, then one day stand on our own. Because I feel like we are where Asia was 20 years ago in terms of growth, because that's when they were opening up their countries for manufacturing. That's when they were opening up their countries for innovation. For instance, it's shocking that 2022 is the first time a country in Africa being led by Kenya has been able to teach coding in schools. Coding was taught in Asian countries like 20 years ago, you see? So Africa is catching up, but you're catching up in a model that is symbiotic to the Western cultures, to the Asian economies, and to how they do the political systems. Because if you look at
I don't want to add some, about catching up, I feel like, this is the same script that Africa has seen for forever, because you see, when now there's this scramble, because I call it a new scramble for Africa, we're in the same position. And Kenya is just one of the democratic countries in Africa. 90% of countries in Africa are authoritarian. So they will not prefer Western kind of, approach into their governments, because that means that, they are not in power. That's why most of the country easily shifted to China, because China supported a system where, you're not coming to, to focus on internal politics. So I feel even if the America and the European Union start funding projects in Africa, it will be hard for them to work, because most of these countries are ruled by hardcore dictators. In the past 2 years, since 2022 now, almost 15 to 20 countries in Africa have slipped back to dictatorship. 15 of them have had coup d'etats. So there's no democracy in Africa. In fact, it's dying, because the Western countries are demanding a democratic kind of approach. And I was reading an article that was saying that when Blinken was in Africa, it's called the Fragility Act of 2019. They are trying now to implement. It means that the American government will now change its policy from giving aid and all these things to now trying to work with countries to promote democracy. And why is that? Because they realize they've been giving African countries aids for almost 30, 40 years, and the countries are still poor because the money just goes to the pockets of the dictators, and they keep oppressing the people. So for me, I think, I feel like China and Russia are more welcome in Africa than Western countries. The Western countries are only welcome in Africa based on their colonial past. But if you look at the system of governance, especially in countries where it's dictatorial, and you can also see where even when Lavrov came to the president of Russia, the foreign minister of Russia, he went to Egypt. We know Egypt has its own crisis, how it's governed by, by an iron fist. He went to DRC. He went to Uganda, he went to Ethiopia. All these countries, there are some kind of similarities in terms of their own governance, because Africa is very, very far from being a very democratic. Kenya is just one exceptional. South Africa is just one, exceptional. And in Kenya, you can see even in this election how a democratic, fabric has been stretched, to the core. But I feel like most African leaders would prefer working with countries that offer them solutions and are not, because at the end of the day, even if African people have suffered through colonization, their leaders, who took power, still perpetrate the same colonial behavior. They want their people to be subdued so that they can keep controlling the resources, the assets of the of the country. And this is one of the reasons why the Western countries have lost so much, in terms of their foreign policy in Africa. And you can see, even you go to West Africa now, there's a very high backlash of the French government. Even Macron was there. He came to Africa. Macron came, and then Lavrov came, and then Blinken came. You can see all these guys are trying to to go. Like Africa is now the hot cake. They're trying each one of them to get a piece. But Macron came on the backdrop that there's been heavy backlash from former French-speaking countries against France, especially in Burkina Faso. You see, in Mali, they terminated the contract with the French army. They withdrew them. And immediately after that, they signed a contract with the Russian government, because the Russian government is, they did a coup, withdrew the French army. They signed a contract with the Russian government. Now the Russian government is supplying food and military equipment. You go to Central African Republic, they are now signing contracts with the Russian government, because there's some kind of a similar ideology between how Russia operates and this, this country ruled by dictators and military guys. And that's why I'm very wary when I, about Africa as a whole. Individual countries is very different, because everyone, each individual country operates on its own sovereign way. But as Africa as a whole, most of the countries are slipping back to more authoritarian kind of, of ruling. The other day, Uganda came out of one of its longest lockdowns. Kenya, we had a lockdown, but Uganda, I think its lockdown ended this year, if I'm not wrong. So that shows you that there's a lot of issues in Africa that needs to be addressed. And the leaders at the top are, don't want any person to challenge their power base, either through democratic, and if, sometimes they say democracy doesn't work in Africa because it's always misused. They rig the elections, they do all this stuff. So an accountability per se in African continent, I don't think the Western would be considered a favorable, asset, especially if they are pushing for, accountability. And the article, I was going through was saying that that's why you find, that's why they're bringing up the Fragility Act, because they've realized to compete with China, the Western governments have realized, because of great power competition, 30, 40 years ago, the great power competition was very low. So it was easy for America to influence its decision in Africa. But they've realized now they're competing with China and Russia, and that's putting them at a bad place, because now they have to, it's putting them at a bad place, because now sometimes even to compete with China, they have to support illegal regimes because they don't want the Chinese to take that country. Let's say if China wants to support Mali, and America also wants to support Mali, and the leader of the Malian government is not a promoter of democracy, sometimes America are forced to support that government because they don't want Mali to move to the spear of China. That's the issue that they're finding themselves in. And if I look at how the world is going, I feel, these great powers have just, it's now like another round two of coming to, to divide and conquer in Africa in terms of, looking for, especially the war in Ukraine has shown that, Africa is a very big and needed player, especially in the international arena, where, 25 countries abstained or didn't vote against Russia. So the Western side realized that, we need the African countries to support us. The Chinese also feel the same. The Russians also feel the same. I don't know. I think we should continue on the next video. What do you think, Oscar? Because no. Before you start, I'm gonna give you. I think we should continue on the next video. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.